So moving on, water damage. Anybody who's maintained a property or worked at a property, specifically probably apartment complexes, so on and so forth. We've seen these pictures before in there. Not fun, because we know what this means. It means money, it means cleanup. One picture I found, I just put this in the slide the other day. If you look at this middle picture on the top here, you're not going to believe me when I tell you, but I did put a link down here at the bottom. It's true. I know everything on the internet's true, right? Yeah, I know. But this, supposedly, if the picture is true, is the result of a water heater in China leaking and flowing down the side of the building and freezing. I also just saw a tsunami, a lake tsunami up in a video online of up in Minnesota where the water was coming off the lake and it was freezing instantly because it was so cold. But all you saw were these. You saw that one too, yeah. You saw this ice flowing up, and it actually went into this guy's house. Knocked his door down, pushed right through, and went right through his living room. And it was really wild. If you Google lake tsunami, Minnesota, and pull it up, you see it's wild. And the flooding and water in general, it's one of the biggest friends. Our bodies are made up of it, and made up primarily of it. But it's also one of it probably is the most deadliest element on the face of the earth, between the damage it can cause in so many different ways. So we talked about, and I passed around earlier, and you saw some products on the side there, some best practices for flood prevention. Does anybody know what pay me now or pay me later means? Right. Okay. So pay me now means, okay, you can buy the better angle stop, let's say, the better P-trap. You can put in safety devices. You can put in no burst supply lines into your property. You can buy the quality stuff. It's more expensive, but you're paying for it up front. It's in there. It's going to lower your risk of having a flood within your property or in your customer's home. Or you can go up to Home Depot, and save a couple bucks on that angle stop, save a couple bucks on the P-trap and on the supply line. Put something like that in, but increase your chances of having the P-trap leak or have the supply line burst or the angle stop blow off. Okay, and the biggest difference I'd like to say is that when you lower your risk, you know what the cost is going to be. You know you're going to pay an extra $2 for that angle stop or an extra $1 for the supply line. And you know that up front. If you don't do that and you put in a knockoff international piece of junk that was made somewhere overseas, what you don't control anymore is the cost if you do have a flood. We all talk about, how many people here work for or in apartment complexes? Okay. Think of a 10-story apartment complex. What happens if the guy on the 10th floor, him and his wife go away for a 2-week cruise, 10-day cruise, whatever it is, and on day 2 of them leaving, the supply line in the bathroom, in bathroom 1, bursts? Well, you got water flowing. So because they're not there, well, the apartment's going to have a lot of water damage. But where's that water going to go? The apartment's not going to fill up like a fish tank. The water's going to flow. It's going to go down. It's going to go left. It's going to go right. It's going to go any direction it can. So you're not talking about one issue. If the couple's home and the supply line bursts, oh, geez, hopefully he knows what he's doing. He can shut the water off to his bathroom. But assuming he can, oh, no, we have a spill on the bathroom floor. No big deal. But if they're gone for days, how long is it going to take before somebody realizes that there's water and it's in multiple apartments on multiple floors now? It's a scary thought. I mean, water is, and then that's before you even start talking about mold, which we'll go into in a minute. Another best practice to see here in the second main bullet down, there's leak detection systems out there, such as WaterCop. How many people have heard of WaterCop here in the room? Okay, a few. All right. So unique system, as you can see there, these are dual sensors, so you can protect 2 different places at once, but you can place these sensors throughout, your home or even a section of an institution. And, we're talking about toilets, talking about faucets, dishwashers, washing machines, water heaters, etc. Place these sensors all throughout your home, or like I said, even a commercial area if you need to. And if one of those sensors gets wet, it sends a wireless signal back to shut off the incoming water to the home or to that location. As you can see there, the little ball valve there, that will operate and shut the water off. So all you would lose is the water that's in the line at that point. And they work within about 150 feet of the actual actuator there. So it's something to think about as well. And then last line, as we all know, all water heaters leak. If you're going to protect your water heater, you want the Cadillac. In other words, if you're going to spend the money and invest the money on putting a protection device on your water heater, you don't want to put the Yugo. You want to put a Cadillac on there. So some facts and figures. The reason why I'm focusing on water heaters is we all know they leak. It's not a question of when, or it's not a question of how, it's a question of when, or if, it's when. 5 million water heaters are replaced in a single year. 70% of the leaks come from the tank itself. They don't come from the incoming line. They don't come from the outgoing line, or any of the parts in between. They come from the tank itself. Average residential damage over $2,500. Commercial damage is over $10,000, and that's before you start talking about the mold removal, which is again can go into the thousands as well. Interesting, and you, sir, said you were up in Mass. I don't know if you've seen this yet or not, if you've come across this, but, first off, overall across the country, a lot of insurance companies will say, hey, you have a building and you have a water heater, you put a claim in for a water heater leak. Now we want you to change all the water heaters in your building, otherwise we're canceling your policy. Very common, because they know if the water heaters are the same age, one goes, they know another one's going to go, and they don't want to pay multiple claims. They're going to say, hey, look, this one just went. You put this one in about the same time. It's probably getting ready to go too. We want you to change them out, and they'll require that. Massachusetts now requires, when there's occupancy below, you need to have a water pan that has piping that will also bring that water out in case there's a leak, and in some cases requiring an automatic shut-off device or both. And the biggest stat, and no, this is not a typo, but in many cases, in many cases, people don't burn a claim because they're afraid of losing their policy. But, average deductible is about $10,000. But up in the Northeast here, we've seen it as high as $25,000. And let me repeat that: $25,000 deductible, not $2,500, $25,000. Now, when you have a $25,000 deductible, you're not going to use it well. We hope you're not going to use it, because the deductible is so high. It's like having not having insurance. What's that? Obamacare? Yeah. As somebody said in the back, yeah, it's like having Obamacare, where you buy insurance and never use it. Yeah, it's something you're required to have, and we're not going to get political here today, but I understand where you're going with that. So, what's the answer to all this? The Cadillac, which is the WHID. And I have one here. I'm going to pass it around. So, water heater isolation device. And 3 main benefits this device provides. I'm going to pass this around so we can see it here. Now, there are devices out there that do some things that the WHID does, but it does shut off the incoming water supply. So you see here in the diagram on the top right, it's asphyxiated on the incoming supply line. There is a piece of tubing that goes between, as you can see there on the other diagram. And then you have a check valve, double check valve on the outgoing line. So what's the benefit of this device is that it will shut the incoming water off. If there's a leak, and this works off the PSI in the tank. So what happens is, if there's a leak in the tank, there's going to be a drop in PSI. This device is going to recognize that. When it hits a certain level, it's going to shut the incoming water off. And the other benefit it does, which I'm going to get to in a second here, is that it's going to hold the water in the water. It's going to create a vacuum, which keeps the remaining water in the tank, which gives you a protection that no other device on the market has. What do you mean, Mike? Well, think this way. You get a leak in the side of the tank, water starts to drip out. Other devices out there, when that water drips out, if they have a sensor, it's going to pick that up and it's going to shut the incoming water off. This device, but it's not going to stop the water from coming out that's in the tank. And you might have 50 or 60 gallons in there. What this device does is not only shut the incoming water off, but it's also going to create a vacuum within to hold the rest of that water in the tank. And you ask, how does it do that? Well, think about if you take a straw, stick it into a glass of water, put your finger over the top of the straw and lift up. What have you done? Well, you've just created a vacuum yourself, and that's why it's holding that water in the straw. It's the same type of concept. So that's a big point there. Thermal expansion. We know that if the expansion tank fails, you could have an issue. And what happens is water is going to escape from the T&P valve, temperature and pressure valve. And this is just a point to let you know that if the T&P valve activates or water comes out of the T&P valve, the WHID's going to activate as well. And I'm going to get to questions here in a second, but I want to mention that the reason why this is the Cadillac of devices is it not only shuts the incoming water off, but also creates a vacuum. It holds the remaining water in the tank, and there's no other device out there that does it. It's a patented device. Does not require any additional piping, as you saw from the illustration on the previous page. Sits right on the incoming line. The other side of the part goes on the outgoing line. Okay. No piping, no batteries, no power, no panel, though we know it's a good practice to have that, and there's no sensors. So, you know, some of these other devices out there, water stop, the WHID, they're all required by sensor. WHID, for example, if it gets wet, you have to throw it out and get a new one. The WHID is also reusable, and it can be tested. So theoretically, and not even directly, I've seen it done actually, is where you can install this device on a water heater, bring your customer downstairs and say, listen, I'm going to show you how this works. You can take open a valve to the tank, put a cup under it, let the water out. After that cup's going to be about halfway filled, the WHID's going to activate. This part right here, the little red button's going to pop out. And when it does, the WHID's going to activate. And what happens is it shuts the incoming water off, creates the vacuum. It also alerts the homeowner it's being activated. How does it do that? When the WHID activates, it sends a little bit of water up that plastic line there on the right. You see it. That connects from the solenoid over to the double check valve. It's going to send a little bit of water up that line. And where that water is going to go is upstairs to the home. So when somebody upstairs turns the faucet on and looks for hot water, all that's going to happen is the faucet's going to drip. That's the sign to the homeowner, hey, we have a problem. This can also be installed vertically or horizontally. Very important feature, especially if you're dealing in a tight area. You know, apartment complexes sometimes have these in the ceiling, meaning the water heaters. There may not be a lot of room, so you can use this vertically or horizontally to install it. The other benefit of this as well, like I said, it is reusable and it can be tested. You can test it for your customer. The inner tank, actually, almost forgot a very important point here. As we all know, water heaters are made up of an inner tank, layer of insulation, and then the outer shell. Typically, when you have no protection on you, or even if you have a protection device that has a sensor, the way you find out you have a leak is the inner tank springs a leak, water hits the insulation between the two, and that gets saturated. After that gets saturated, then eventually what happens is that outer shell starts to rust because the water is pressing up against it. And when that outer shell rusts, that's when you start getting a leak. So only then do you know, once it's all rusted out and it's a nasty situation, that you have a leak in the tank. With the WHID, more often than not, when that inner tank springs a leak, that's when you're alerted, because when the inner tank springs a leak is when the PSI in the tank drops. So when the PSI drops, then the WHID realizes that and it activates. Any questions on that? I covered everything on there. All right, you have a okay. You have a question specific for your property. Oh yeah, if you want, yeah, bring it. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. We have time. There's a dog outside there. Yeah, we're in a lounge here, so sometimes people. There are some apartments up on the other side there. Sometimes they're walking their dog. So yeah, you do hear that. Okay, so the question was warranty. Okay, the solenoid is guaranteed for 5 years. The internals are guaranteed for 2 years, I believe. It's either 2 or 1. I'll check for that to make sure. But we've never had a problem with the internals going, and the reason for that is that you constantly have water flowing through this. So the internal parts are always moving. They're not sitting there gathering rust or anything, because anytime there's a demand for water, the parts inside the WHID are moving. So there's some that have been installed for 5 years. And by the way, in many cases, when the water heater goes, a lot of customers take the WHID with them or remove the WHID and put it onto the new water heater. So it is transferable. It's not a one, and it's reusable too. So if it does activate, you can use it multiple times, or some products out there you can't. And the price, oh yes, the pricing down here, I didn't touch on that. Our normal list price on these are $399.99. If you get it now between the end of March, $305. Okay, and obviously, if you're redoing an entire complex, we can talk more. There is a bulk rate as well based on a certain amount, but just talk to me offline on that if you guys are looking to change them out in the entire property. Okay. Any questions? Okay, great. Let's